Hi everyone, this is Jim. Welcome to this postmortem of my Blitz game number 739. I started off with e4 and my opponent went e6, the French defense. So I go d4, the main response. He goes d5. And I go knight c3. Knight c3 invites either the classical French defense with knight f6 or the Winauer French with bishop b4. But he plays the Rubinstein French with d takes e4. And there's a couple different ideas with this. First of all, black is giving up the center, but he still has that kind of solid setup that you get with the French defense. And the normal way of continuing is with knight to d7. But my opponent is playing a specific variation known as the Fort Knox variation of the French defense. And the idea with this one is to first maneuver the bishop to d7 and then to f6, putting it on this nice diagonal that was just opened up by that exchange. And then bringing the knight to d7. It's considered very solid for black, but it's viewed with some suspicion because it's an awfully slow way of setting up. If white had a way of breaking through, then it might be that black would be in trouble. But I don't really know how to refute it, and I didn't really see anything great in the database either. But anyway, let's go on with the game. He went bishop d7. You can see white has a significant edge in terms of the statistics in the database. So I play the main move here, knight f3, just developing a knight. Can't be a problem. And so he places his bishop on c6, completing that Fort Knox development. And then I need to defend my bishop, so I defend it. And now knight d7 is by far the main move. Taking makes almost no sense. You're giving up a bishop for the knight, and you are taking a piece that you've moved twice already to develop, and moving it a third time and trading off this piece. So yeah, just hard to make sense of it. Although it does not seem to lose immediately. It leaves white with a very nice position, and we'll go over where I get into trouble. I guess c4 is the first move that's maybe not quite precise. There is no queen knight anymore. That's been traded off. And a lot of times the motivation for playing c4 is to get that pawn to c4 ahead of a possible knight move. But there's no hurry to play c4 in this position. And rather than deciding right now whether the pawn belongs on c3 or c4, I mean, there's a case to be made for putting it on c3 so that it's a solid center here. When you place it on c4, the d pawn can come under fire. So you don't have to make that decision right away. You can leave that open because you'll have the opportunity to play c4 later. And you could play a move like bishop to e3 or f4. Just develop another piece. You could castle queen to e2. There were different ideas in this position. So c4 was a committal move, unnecessarily committal. I didn't have to play that right away, and potentially weakening, although it still leaves white with an edge if you believe the chess engine. So black continues the knight f6. I went bishop back to c2. He's hitting my bishop, and I want to do the usual thing where I line up my queen and bishop. But well, he's not planning to castle kingside, so maybe I was a little too quick to go for that setup. He went to bishop d6 here, and let's see, I went h3. I didn't want my knight tied down to defensive h2. At any point, he could harass this knight, and when it gets moved away, then this pawn on h2 is falling. Also keeps the knight out of g4, which sometimes comes with mate threat. So I think it's not a bad move. Let's see, he goes knight bd7. I went queen to d3. So I think this is premature. I'm putting this here before he's committed to castling kingside. Let's see, he played h6, went bishop e3. Another positive side of this move is that it controls the g4 square, so we can't easily harass this bishop. So I think I'm okay here, and the chess engine still gives me advantage. But, well, this lineup of the bishop and queen doesn't make so much sense now that he's castled queenside. So yeah, my attack is probably not as strong as it could be, and I have to refocus my attention on the queen side here. So I start with a3. I couldn't play b4 immediately, but I want to get that in. Played king b8. I went ahead with b4. And then he started with g5. So up until this point, the chess engine has been giving a fairly steady advantage to white. Not a winning advantage, but a nice opening advantage, I guess. Here, though, it switches all of a sudden after knight d2, and it likes black better. So knight d2, I guess, is the wrong idea here. I just hate to run into this g4 move, which will open up some lines over here on the king side when it's clear that black is already lined up. He's got this rook already pointing at my king, potentially, and the other rook ready to come over. Queen and bishop are lined up, and this knight is already ready to jump into the action. So I do have to be a little bit careful. The chess engine says, though, and then this is an interesting way to play, c5. I wasn't sure if I wanted to play c5 because that gives away the d4 square, but it kicks the bishop off that diagonal, so it reduces the force on that diagonal. And then g3, with the idea that if he plays pawn to g4 right now, I have bishop to f4 with a skewer of his queen and his king. So this g3 move actually prevents prevents him from playing g4 immediately. So knight d5, that controls the f4 square and enables a potential g4. Rook to b1, preparing to push the b pawn forward and try and open up some lines against the king. Now g4 can be played. If I put my bishop on f4, I'll just take it. So I take here, and then say he brings this knight around to try and win that pawn, I can actually defend it. So he's sacked a pawn, he's opened up, or he's got a half-open g-file, and he's got an h-file. But I've got an extra pawn for the moment, and I've blocked up this diagonal here. So it appears that white is just doing fine in this position. I'm surviving the attack, and I'm maybe still a little better. Still have that opening advantage that I had all the game. So this running away with the knight to d2 is a little too compliant, I guess. Let's see. He continued with rook d to g8. I went rook f to b1. I'm trying to push forward on the king side. He went h5. Right now, the chess engine wants him to immediately push on with g4. And if I play h4 to push on with g3, to go ahead and just open things up. And now if I take that pawn, he can take with the bishop, so I'll try and keep things closed with f3. But now he can, concentrate his forces on this sort of isolated h-pawn that's not defended. And yeah, it looks awkward. It doesn't say this is a winning attack for black, but it gives a slight edge to black there. Let's see, h5 maybe is a little bit slower, but well, it's all okay. Let's see, I go b5, he goes c5. He wants to keep the line shut around his king too, and I think he's being a little bit more successful than I was. And I went ahead and took with the idea of, as I said, opening up lines towards his king. But I shouldn't have kept taking. Right here, this trade brings his bishop to the diagonal, and we saw in the game this creates all kinds of problems. I should just move my queen away from the knight, let it sit on that square. So I've given him a good square, and he's blockaded me. But I'll just push forward on the A file and the B file, and I should still have enough counterplay here for a balanced position. So after bishop takes c5, this is where my position really starts to go downhill. I mean, it started with I was better, and we got to this range where I was about even to slightly better for black. But after this, black is much better, and knight e4, and I am just losing after this. So let's see, instead of knight e4, I could have tried knight b3, and this ends up losing a pawn, but the idea is I'm threatening his bishop, and then I sack a pawn like this, c5, bishop takes c5, knight takes c5, and he gets that back, right? So he's a pawn up, but I'm not getting killed here. It's just a one-pawn advantage, and I can play on, not necessarily game over, but after knight e4, it's actually game over. And so he plays this next part very well. He takes the knight, I take back, and then he pushes on with g4. I think that is one of the problems, is that that trade dragged my queen away from the defense of some of these squares. And the other problem is the first trade has blocked this diagonal. I have a light squared bishop. So as I mentioned before, if you have opposite squared bishops, it really favors the attacker. In this case, black is attacking, and I have no good way to defend that f-pawn that's pinned. So that's why this is just a win. Let's see. Pushed on with h4 to try and keep that closed. He pushed with g3, and here I realized how much trouble I was in. There's no way to move that pawn, no way to defend it that doesn't lose material. So I tried king f1. He took, and then I played bishop to d1. I need to route my bishop around to this side to defend some key squares over here, keep his rook from coming in here and chasing my queen away, and also setting up some counter threats on this diagonal. And now this next move, queen h2, he is not the most accurate move. It's kind of funny. So he has totally a winning advantage at this point. And well, let's give one winning line that was given by the chess engine. It's kind of nice. First f5, kicking my queen back. So the queen drops back to d3, staying out of his range of his bishop, but trying to still control some squares on the king side. Sacking the rook here. Rook takes g2, and of course he's going to push the rook through and queen if I don't take it. So I have to accept his sacrifice. He brings the other rook in. I have to block the pawn. Then he brings his rook down to g1. Check. The pawn is defended by the bishop, so my king has to run away, and then he can queen. And pretty clear win for black there. He's up in material and attacking. So that would be the win there. Instead he went queen h2, and after I just played the move bishop f3, pretty natural. Like I said, I want to defend this pawn, and I want to set up some counter threats here. He had nothing better than to go back. So he's still winning. That didn't give away the whole advantage, but it was a wasted tempo, and not the best way to win. I went rook d1 here, thinking maybe to get some counterplay by getting a rook to the 7th rank if possible. But he opposed me immediately with rook d8. Then I went a4, trying to push my pawns towards his king, and he went e5. And actually the second move puts the game in the range where he's only slightly better. I have some drawing chances after this. Let's see. It's still much better for white if he plays like this. Rook c8, get away from that trade, keep the rooks on. I push on with a5, and then f5, kicking my queen. Yeah, if I just move my queen, then it turns out he's fine. Also, if I take the pawn, he counterattacks the queen along the e-file and gets a lot of play that way. So those lines turn out good for black. The best line for white here is actually b6, at least according to the chess engine. And then after he trades, then moving the queen back to d3 at that point, and with the idea of coming over here and trying to get some counterplay against the king. But black is still winning in these lines. After e5, it's not as clear, and he no longer has a clear win, although it varies, it goes back and forth. He still has an advantage. Anyway, I push on with a5. He goes bishop d4. I missed this move. It's a nice move. It closes down the d-file. It leaves this pawn hanging. That was the part I didn't see, and it attacks my rook. I noticed that. So I should probably play rook to c8, c1 here rather, and defend the pawn. Instead I went rook to a2. Now he grabs his pawn with check, and starting to look pretty good for black again. Let's see. I blocked, my rook was hanging, so I blocked with the rook. And then he played rook to d7, defending the threat. So nicely played by black there. But, well, like I said, the evaluation has varied, but it's no longer a clear win for black anymore. He just has an advantage and has to play for the best he can. Let's see, I played a6. I took this pawn, and I took with the rook. Maybe it would have been better to take with the queen, because this always gives me the chance. I don't think it's so good right here, but I can always play queen takes b7. Oh yeah, the chess engine, I guess, thinks this is a draw. Queen takes b7 is a way to win the exchange. And I guess in this case, you know, I've got 2 rooks against a rook and a bishop, but he has 3 extra pawns. Anyway, yeah, that'd be a tough position to play. Probably tough for both sides to play. Let's see. I didn't go that way. I went rook takes d4. I spotted another tactic, and I thought I would win thought I would win his rook when I played my queen here. Well, win the exchange back, plus I get to win this pawn. But actually, he plays it. At first, he plays correctly here. He can. He doesn't have to give the exchange back. He can block the check this way with his rook. Let's see. I went back to e4, threatening to bring my queen to the back rank, and right here, he can still keep his edge by playing king c8, because my threat of coming into to a8 here, queen a8 check is what I've been planning. Doesn't really amount to anything if he blocks with the queen. So so he keeps all of his advantages in this line. He's the exchange up. I may round up a pawn or two, but he'll still have an extra pawn as well as being the exchange up. So he keeps his advantages there. So that was a way for him to try and continue with to press for a win. He went back to b7. Now I played queen f4 check. And we could, of course, repeat and get back to that position where he has a chance to play king c8. But he chose this time to go king a8. And so finally, I think it's a draw after this. I take, and he took with the queen. And then I grabbed this pawn. He went to queen b1 check. There was no way to save the other pawn. So we can consider the smoke is cleared here. And I'm a pawn down. But what's interesting about this position is that my king is actually a little safer than his king. I've got two pawns nearby, and I can walk my king around and get behind them, whereas his king can never be sheltered from the checks. And, well, we'll show the effect of that in a little bit. He went queen f5 check. When my king here, he went rook to c8. And now right here, if I played king h2, the chess engine starts to give an advantage to white here. So I'm just getting my king to safety, as I mentioned before. Let's see. The line given by the engine, it goes like this: f6, rook e7, get to the 7th rank and attack this pawn. Rook to c5, blocking, so I can't take the pawn. Then rook e8 check, and blocking with the rook, and then the trade. And then the queen check on d5. Say king b8, and I pick up this pawn. And now you can see that white really is better. Black's king is more exposed. My pawns are together, and white's pawns are scattered, and the material is even. It would be hard to win. I mean, the chess engine starts to give like a +2 advantage to to white here, but it'd be hard to win because, well, somewhere between +1 and +2, I think. It would be hard to win because as I move these pawns forward, my king would become exposed to check, so it would still be tough. But I would have the winning chances there. Anyway, I was pretty much content with a draw at this point. I just went for this rook and pawn endgame, which I thought should be okay for me. Let's see, he went rook to f8. Yeah, I thought because his pawns were all scattered, I thought I could round them up. Rook e5, I thought I was going to win a pawn immediately, but he holds on for a little bit with f5. But I can bring my king in. And my king is just closer to the action over here than his king is. So, and his pawn was not in a position to be pushed forward without the support of the rook and the king, in which case I would have rounded up these pawns and started pushing mine. So he hasn't really made any mistakes. It's still basically a draw no matter what we do. But after, let's see, is it here? Around here, he starts to get in a little bit of trouble. Let's see, he played rook f7 to defend all of his pawns. I get my king to g5. And yeah, I think around here I'm starting to be a little bit better. I take, he went back with his king. Maybe this back and forth with the king was wasting too much time. And right here, king g6, another chance. The chess engine said I had to get a winning edge. I'm hitting his rook. And after the rook moves, I can start pushing my h-pawn forward. So the material is even, but my passed pawn is closer than his passed pawn, and my rook is well placed, blocking his pawn, defending things, and his king is away from the action. So so I might have had winning chances there. Anyway, I wasn't. I was happy to get a draw at this point. I went king g4. He went king b6. Dropped my rook back. Let's see, he gave a check, and then we agreed to a draw here. I'm going to take a pawn. He's going to win a pawn, and should be a draw. So interesting game. Hope you guys enjoyed this, and I will see you again soon.